I own and operate 8 rental units of my own that provides passive income and equity building for down the road. But why do I not want to invest in more real estate? In this episode, I'm going to tell you exactly that. Let's go. Hey guys, welcome back to Lifestyle Leaps. I'm DM Martin and I have a small portfolio of rental properties. I own 4 homes across 3 states, and inside those 4 homes is a collection of my personal residence as well as 8 rental units. The claim to fame in real estate is we like to share how many units we have or how much rental income we collect. And I'm here to tell you I'm not really looking to scale my real estate portfolio any more than it already is. So some things I could see myself doing is buying another primary residence where I don't have to house hack and I don't have to share with other people down the road when the time is right. Or if I do like a 1031 exchange to roll over some of my out-of-state properties into a small apartment complex. But I'm not really looking to be as big as I can, have as many units as I can, because I also think that's a lot more liability and more risk that I don't think that I want. So let's go over what scaling would normally mean. A lot of people, they start out with a single family home, they roll that investment into maybe like a duplex, triplex, or fourplex, and then eventually they might own a lot of single family homes, or they want to own apartment buildings. As I've learned over the years, I started out with my first home having a roommate and an Airbnb granny unit in the back, right? So that's essentially 2 parties that I'm responsible for. When that has grown now to 8 rental units, I'm contacted all the time. And one option is I could hire a property manager to manage my short-term rental, but then they take like 25% of your revenue, which is insane. I would have nothing left. Or long-term rentals, they'll take anywhere from 8 to 12% of your rental income to manage your property. I don't want to give up this cash flow because that cash flow is actively in use to pay for my mortgage, utilities, groceries. And so I'm not a super passive owner. And in that, I also have to deal with a lot of like Airbnb communication, Furnish Finder communication, VRBO communication, and then even my direct long-term tenants who communicate directly to me. That's already enough as it is. Now, if you're interested in how I self-manage that portfolio, I'll link the video down below. But it's doable and it doesn't take a long time, but it's always being responsive. I just don't want more of that. In order to scale to the degree where I can afford to hire a property manager and not feel the pain of losing that income, I would have to jump quite a bit to do that. And so that kind of like interim period, I'm going to be super busy. The second reason why I don't want to scale is because it's going to be quality over quantity. As a landlord right now, as an Airbnb host, I'm very attentive to the needs of my people. If I offload that to a property manager, I know for a fact that that's going to be reduced. Their experience will be cheapened. Furthermore, if I want to maintain that quality, I'd have to work so hard as I scale that I think I'm just going to lose it even if I continue to operate it by myself, because I cannot continue to be as diligent and attentive as I am now on a larger scale. Now, I want you to think about what is your end goal, because when I started buying property and knowing that real estate was going to be a part of my short-term cash flow portfolio and long-term investment strategy to build equity over time, I didn't just randomly start going for it. I did think about, okay, what's the lifestyle that I want, right? I want enough passive income today to start enjoying and reaping the benefits of these real estate properties and managing them, not just wait for cash flow from down the road when I've paid the properties off and collecting rents at that point, or not waiting for asset appreciation where in 10, 15, 30 years, they are going to worth double in price, maybe triple in price, because then I won't be enjoying any fruits of my labor right now. And if you know me at all, that's not my philosophy. I live for both today and for later. And the other part of my philosophy is I want just a little more than enough. my goal in properties is I want a little cash flow to cover all of my expenses and also still continue to save for retirement, save for vacancies, save for repairs, emergency funds, all these things. You got to save. Plus, I want enough to travel and I want enough for my basis to be covered. So my regular mortgage bills, utility bills, groceries, etc. So between all of my investments, from my house cleaning agency business to my online course for how to start and run your own agency to my real estate investments, those kind of passive or semi-passive portfolio needs to be enough to cover all of that. Some of you know I'm also a real estate agent. That's an active job. That's not considered part of my passive or semi-passive portfolio. And I do that because I love it and I really enjoy working with people and I needed to get out of the house and shake hands and hold babies. So that's a whole separate thing. Okay. I want to talk about risk management. That's another piece that people don't talk about when they refer to scaling and getting bigger. The more people you rent to, the more exposure you have for something to go wrong, for them to trip and fall, have an incident, file a lawsuit. And so keeping that manageable decreases the likelihood that you're going to have to face something like that. Also, that means that you have to take preventative measures from that ever happening. Having an umbrella policy in place for your properties, having landlord insurance appropriate for long-term or short-term or mid-term rental properties where it's appropriate. Having risk management is important no matter what size you are, and it just gets more complicated, more expensive, and more difficult as you scale. Next point I want to talk about is avoiding burnout. Burnout is something that I have felt in every single business I've ever started, real estate being one of them too. So as a landlord, I'm already spent by the amount of emotional energy that it takes to run the properties. I remember 2 winters ago, no, it was last winter, I had a roof leak at one of my houses. I had a roof leak at my own residence. I had a frozen burst pipe at another spot in Portland, Oregon. Thank goodness nothing happened to the Arizona house. But sometimes when it rains, it pours. If it rained and poured any more during those times, I don't think I could have handled it. Imagined if I had even more properties. I saw this super good episode on Ryan Pineda's podcast. It was with David Green, and this was about David Green having left the Bigger Pockets podcast. They really talked about all of the horrific things that David had to go through recently because he has so many properties. The exposure was so big. Now, granted, it was very unlikely that all this bad stuff would happen at the same time, but unfortunately for David, it did. And watching that episode, my heart broke for him and for Ryan, who's going through a lot. But that's also kind of reinforcing my value around having just a little more than enough and not having too much. I just don't want that big of a rainy day, if you know what I mean. So I talk about the reasons why I don't want to scale, but I do want to point out all of the benefits why I want to have real estate at all. Okay, so there's a lot of good reasons why you should include real estate in your investment portfolio. When you think about buying a property, most of us are going to use a loan to buy a property. And if you use, let's say, an FHA loan and you're putting 3.5% as a down payment, that means that 96.5% of the value of that home is being paid for with someone else's money. It's on a loan. You're only investing 3.5%. In a conventional loan, let's say you put 5% down, then 95% of is being leveraged by somebody else's money, the bank's money. So you're able to leverage other people's money to build wealth over time because that asset will appreciate in value. That brings me to the next one, appreciation. So another benefit of real estate is that there's 2 ways you can have appreciation in your home. One is called forced appreciation and the other is called market appreciation. When you buy a home and let's say you got something that's kind of a little janky, you're going to remodel it over time, let's say. You're going to upgrade the bathroom, fix the paint, the carpet, upgrade the hardware, remodel the kitchen. These are forced appreciation. You're doing these things to create more value in the home. If an appraiser was to come and assess the value, it would be worth more because of the work that you did. The second one is market appreciation, and that happens when based on supply and demand, naturally the market value of the home goes up over time. We've seen this massively between 2020 and let's say 2022, 23, where home prices just went up through the roof. These things are happening whether you do something to the home or not, and you're gaining equity so that if you were to resell it at a price higher than when you bought it, you would realize that appreciation in the form of equity. The next benefit of having rental property is tax deduction, and that could be seen in depreciation. So when you buy a home, standard depreciation is that you would take the value of the home itself, not the land, and it would be depreciated over 27 and a half years. That means that every year you get to deduct that amount from your taxable income. That is a really huge benefit because the house is not at zero value after 27 and a half years. In fact, it's worth a lot more than when you bought it, but you're still able to depreciate this asset over time to benefit your taxable income. Another great factor of owning real estate in your portfolio is cash flow from rental income. And that is the amount that you collect in rents minus what you have to pay for it. So that's going to be on your loan, property tax, insurance, and interest. So with those things, you still have to consider a couple other things. Okay, people like to call cash flow anything that you make above and beyond that. I don't really consider that straight cash flow because I know that down the road, it's still going to have repairs, sometimes major repairs, and it's going to have vacancy that I'll need to fill. Like right now, 2 of my units don't have renters and it's been like a week. I have to have money to put in to compensate for those vacancies so that I can still pay my bills, right? So I would say cash flow with a caveat. Make sure you account for those factors as well. The next benefit is debt pay down, using other people's money. So earlier we talked about other people's money being the bank, using their money to take a loan to buy a house where you only had to put a small down payment. Now, once you put a renter in there, their rental dollars is actually what's paying for your mortgage payments, not your dollars. And then the cash flow that you get above and beyond that is what you get to keep. That's why debt pay down is such a huge part, because all of the equity that you're going to realize later from debt pay down is yours, but the money that's used to pay for it is from your renters. There's something to be said about slow and intentional and steady growth. When I bought my first house, there was a huge learning curve about how to qualify. What can I negotiate in terms of pricing? Then after I bought it, there's how do I get contracts for my roommate? How do I furnish and list the unit behind me on Airbnb? How do I manage this Airbnb? Then when I was lining up to buy my second house, it was how do I manage this Airbnb and my tenant from not living there? How do I get it clean when I'm not there? Am I going to be the one to continue to clean it? If in my new unit I have another roommate or another Airbnb, now I'm juggling multiple Airbnbs. What does that look like? How can I simplify my systems? And so from unit 1 to unit 2 to unit 3, all that space that's in between there is great learning opportunity. So I'm just saying that to make sure that you know you don't have to rush, that there is steady growth in between the first and the second property and so on. And so all of that to say in this video, I want to give you a couple of tips. I think the most important thing is to start with the end in mind. Think about what's your financial freedom number. If you need help determining that, I'll have something linked down below for you to calculate that for yourself. Also, you want to think about what your monthly expenses are going to come to, what you need to cover, what kind of work-life balance you need to have, and that'll help you determine how many units you're going to need and what kind of workflow that is. And then lastly, don't let real estate be the only thing that you have going on. I think it's important to have a few different streams of income. Now, I'm not saying you need to have like 12 streams of income. More streams isn't better, but there is something to be said about diversifying how you get your money, because when one piece fails, hopefully you'll have other pieces that are working for you. And this even works inside of your rental. For example, I have a single family home that I converted the garage into a Section 8 rental that's guaranteed long-term income. The middle part of the house is a furnished midterm rental that is more money than I get from the long-term rental, but more stability than I get from a short-term rental. And in the same single family home, there is a suite that I rent out to short-term rentals. So in that one building, there's 3 types of incomes that's coming in. And that just helps me feel good and sleep well at night because I have some diversification in that portfolio. I'd like you to look at your income as a whole with that same mindset. Because, for example, when I have the cleaning agency, I know that that is kind of a luxury business. Some people really need it, like our seniors, or, if people aren't physically able. But for a lot of the population, house cleaning is a service of luxury, right? Which means that in a down market, maybe that business isn't going to be doing so well. But yet, in a down market, I might actually end up having more students for the online course, because if they're getting laid off and they're looking for something to start up on their own, they might be looking for a new business opportunity for when the market corrects. And so that is more helpful. Or if I monetize on YouTube, right, that content gets consumed. Did you know how many online influencers boomed during 2020? You just have to try to use your skill set across different types of businesses, but ones that thrive in different market conditions is my tip for you. In conclusion, I hope you found this video helpful. I wanted to share the reasons why, even though I'm a relatively successful real estate investor and real estate agent, why I've decided to slow down on my real estate portfolio and not aggressively expand my portfolio going forward. I'm pretty happy where I'm at, even if I add another 1 or 2 down the road. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.